Welcome back to The Advisor. If you have not yet liked and subscribed, please do so we can continue bringing you amazing guests like the one you're about to meet today. Meet Amber Romaniuk. She is an emotional eating, digestive, and hormone expert with 12 years experience of helping high achieving women create a level of body confidence, intuition, and optimal health through powerful mindset healing, self-care, and overcoming self-sabotage with food. Maybe by the end of this episode, I'll understand why I get up at 3 in the morning and crush salt and vinegar chips. So she does this through addressing the key negative thought patterns and limiting beliefs that keep women stuck. So in the same behaviors for years and decades that they have not been able to break. Her podcast, the No Sugarcoating Podcast, has 2+ million downloads, over 500 episodes, and is listened to in over 90 countries. So she overcame her own emotional eating after gaining and losing more than 1,000 pounds and spending over $50,000 on binge foods and spending 5 years balancing her hormones and digestion. So she also dismantled her deep limiting beliefs and behaviors, keeping her stuck in the same looping patterns. Now she helps others achieve the biggest healing miracles of body freedom. So they have the confidence and health to create amazing lives. And she is here today to talk about her story and share her insights with all of you. Welcome to the show, Amber. It's really nice to meet you.
It's nice to meet you too, Lisa. Thanks for having me. And we can definitely later talk about the waking and the salt and vinegar chips and all that. There's already things in my brain that are like that could be why this is happening. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like 3 o'clock in the morning. But first, let's hear about you. Thanks so much for being here. Like I said, it's really great to meet you. Where are you coming in from?
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm coming in from just outside of Calgary, Alberta, Canada, which is in Western Canada. For those that may know, we're very close to the Rocky Mountains. So Banff, Canmore, Lake Louise, those are some of the very well-known places that a lot of people come to from around the world. So yeah.
Nice. I actually am in Manitoba, so I'm in Canada
Oh,
too.
oh my goodness. Okay, very small world.
Yes, very small world. So I know the place very well. It's beautiful there.
Yeah, yeah, it's nice to be so close.
Yes, absolutely. So tell us about yourself in your own words. I know I just talked about your experience, but tell us about you.
Yeah, so as you shared in my bio, I went through quite a dark night of the soul, you could say, with the food addiction, binge eating, bulimia, emotional eating. And if you want, I can share a little bit about that now of, the ups and downs of that whole story. But healing essentially prompted me to go, how many other women, and I know men are struggling as well, but how many other women are struggling with these behaviors and are not getting the proper support? They're not met with empathy and compassion. These are very like can feel very embarrassing, shameful, like hide in the closet. I don't want anyone to know about it, behaviors, and they shouldn't be. But I just even think of myself, I didn't tell anybody. I didn't want anyone to know. I felt so embarrassed and ashamed that I was to the point where I was eating out of my garbage can, which I'll talk more about that. And so I feel like so many women are keeping this secret, but it's not helping you if you do that. And I just want to let you know you're not alone. And I see and hear you. And if I can heal, you can heal too. And there's just so much power in sharing the story and having the conversation and having women come together to normalize the conversation and to abnormalize these behaviors from being such an epidemic on the planet that are not being properly addressed. So that's what inspired me to really start my business was my own experience and having a poor experience the one time I did try to reach out for help and just promising myself if I ever help other women, I'm going to make sure that I hold a very safe space and that it's a non-judgmental space and that they feel safe opening up. And I think that's like the first most important step to having women coming into the space is knowing that they feel safe and that they can, have someone who can relate to what they've been through. So yeah, so that started the business 12 years ago, and I coach women all over the world to claim what I call food and body freedom. And we really work on things physically, mentally, emotionally, energetically, even spiritually, but it's a lot about healing your relationship with food, regardless of whether you're binge eating and then you're dieting, restricting, and then some women are binging and purging, or you have this full-blown food addiction where you're just obsessing about food all the time, whether you're obsessing about the next diet, the next calorie count, or you're obsessing around your next binge, your next emotional eating session. I can't wait to get home and eat the pint of ice cream. I'm going to eat all the chocolate or whatever it is, right? Like that is, full blown food addiction and chasing the number on the scale and all those kinds of things. So, my food addiction was really birthed from a very young age. I just didn't know that that's what I was dealing with. So, a few key things happened when I was a child, and I'll just summarize those briefly. But when I was 5, was my first day taking the bus, and the older boys called me fat and ugly, and then the whole bus made fun of me, and that very much hurt a lot being 5. And I took that identity on for the next 20 years of my life. I'm like, if strangers are saying it, it must be true. I didn't know how to brush that off. And so then with that insecurity and feeling very shy and quiet, growing up in a household where my mom had multiple sclerosis and she was diagnosed with it before I was born. And so we had a very close relationship. But two things. First thing, there was all the food available all the time, all the sweets, all the baked goods, all the treats, all the sugar, because she was actually dealing with a food addiction. And I think it's how she was trying to cope with her diagnosis. I don't wish that upon anyone. It's such a horrible disease. And watching my mom decline my whole life was a huge grieving and very difficult process to go through, especially starting in childhood. And I think that's the second thing is witnessing your mother that you love so much that gave birth to you and that is, right, one of your parents raising you. It is so hard to witness that woman you love so much declining and you don't feel like you can do anything about it. And so I felt so out of control and helpless. And I think that's unconsciously part of what birthed the self-sabotage with food, especially as I grew up. Just thinking that was so out of my control. What can I control? How much I eat and when I eat, even though I was completely out of control with food as well and losing control with it. It's interesting the kinds of coping mechanisms that we will take on and think that it's actually doing us a service or it's like a protective mechanism. It's keeping us safe. And then, of course, dieting through my tweens and teens and like, oh, I want to look like Britney Spears. I want her flat stomach. What's wrong with me? How come I don't look like that? Right? We're comparing to celebrities and all the body image stuff starts really kicking up. And then I was 21 when I had my first memorable binge. And essentially, long story short, I had a breakup, my first serious breakup, and I was very hurt at the time and I could barely eat. And I started losing weight really fast. And I was like, oh, maybe I can finally hit that goal weight because I had been so conditioned. We're so conditioned by the weight loss industry. Once you lose weight, you'll finally be happy. And you really believe that. If you hear something long enough, you start to believe it. And so I lost the weight really fast, was over exercising, under eating. Please don't do this, ladies. It's not the way. And it didn't fix anything. It didn't make me happy. It didn't fill my void of unworthiness. My cycle disappeared because now I was losing too much weight, was exercising too much, not eating enough. So it just messes with your hormones. And so then I went to a party and it was just like, I'm only going to eat the salad. But then, of course, an hour and I ate ice cream cake and then I had chocolate and then I had burger and then and then I'm like, well, screw it. I'm messed up. I might as well just have a free for all. And that's really what birthed what I call my all or nothing mentality. And then I was like binging, went home on the way home and got fast food, woke up the next day, got on the scale. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm up 6 pounds. You can't gain 6 pounds in a binge, but it's like all the retention and like the
Yes.
bowels and the food mass and all this stuff. But I didn't know any of that. So I just like freaked out. And then I'm going to the gym working out for 3 hours. So just really birthed that all or nothing between extremes of either heavy restriction, over exercise, under eating, skipping breakfast if I had binged the night before, or having stress and different triggers come up and then completely losing control. Like I was eating until I was so full I was sick. And then I started
Yeah.
gaining weight. I gained 80 pounds in 4 months and now felt completely unrecognizable and so embarrassed and in shame of, oh, I had the perfect body and now like I want to hide. And I was only 21. So it's like these are supposed to be fun years, social years, and I'm hiding at home in shame. I don't want anyone to see me. I don't want to date, right? All that kind of stuff was going on. And that went on for a few years, very significantly, where I suffered on a very deep level because I was binge eating most days of the week. And then I binged and purged for 6 months and was able to get a handle on it because I'm like, if I keep doing this, I may end up with heart disease or like causing serious, permanent damage. And I don't want to do that. And what I was starting to realize about the binge eating and the purging was I'm completely not taking ownership or responsibility if I keep purging, thinking, oh, if I binge, I'll just purge, it'll fix it. No, actually, it's even more self-destructive behavior than the binge. So I had to start kind of like taking some ownership for what I was doing. And then I had my low point moment, and then I'll throw it back to you. But I had a night where I'd started to identify I'm binge eating. I have a food addiction. I actually know what I'm doing and what the behaviors are, but I have no idea how to deal with it. That was like the
Right.
big unknown. And so I was laying on the couch after a binge. I'd always threw the food in the garbage. And then I was laying on the couch in pain, just honestly concerned for my life. I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to make 30 if I keep in this destructive behavior. I was only 22 at the time. And of course, as that food settled, it would always be this, my inner critic would come in and be like, well, if it's the last time you're going to do this, you might as well just go eat the
Yes.
cookies, right? It's the last time. So there's that all or nothing again. And so I go in and I pull out my little blue garbage in my kitchen and I pull out the cookies and I eat them. And then I just sat on the floor and I broke down and I'm just like in shock, in shame. Who am I? I just ate out of my garbage can. And so then I throw the food in the dumpster in the back alley. And then an hour later, I'm back out there digging through the dumpster, grabbing the cookies and eating them. And then I'm like, I just dumpster dove to eat. Like, I've got a serious issue. But that moment was so pivotal for me because I was tolerating so much suffering. I was in this comfort zone where it was very familiar to use food. And I was almost like in denial. This isn't a big deal. Food's my friend. Like, who would I be without it? I don't know. I don't want to even think about that. And the thought of I've got 80 to 90 pounds to lose. I don't know why I'm doing this. Like, the thought of dealing with it was just so intimidating and so daunting because I had no idea what to do or where to start. And so I think the fear of the unknown, fear of change, not knowing what to do was uncomfortable. And so what was comfortable was to continue to do what I was, even though it was causing immense suffering. So the garbage dumpster moment crushed my fear of change, crushed my like resistance to getting uncomfortable. And all of a sudden, the suffering was so big that like it just, none of the rest of the discomfort mattered. I'm like, I got to figure this out. I've got to deal with this. I don't know how, but I gotta figure this out because I'm not willing to have my life be cut short or my quality of life continue to be impacted so much because I am staying in this behavior. And then I went on the journey for the next few years to heal it all. So, yeah,
Yeah, what an amazing story. Thank you, first of all, for sharing that with us.
my pleasure.
Um, so many people can relate to that. And so many people are afraid to say it out loud because if you say it out loud, that makes it real. But there's also, like you said, there's very little places people feel that they can turn to.
Hmm.
And so many people are doing little things like that. And yours wasn't a little thing, but so many people are using tools as a crutch because they don't know how to cope with life.
Yeah.
And so, especially in these like current days, and being a woman, and I mean, we all know as a woman, it's so hard because we're expected to be everything
Hmm.
all at once. And like you said so beautifully, like most of the time, that means that we're not putting ourselves first at all.
Yeah.
And so, I guess I'm curious, after you realized that you wanted more for yourself, and I'm sure you always felt that in your heart. So
Hmm.
what was the first thing you did? What did you do to start changing your behavior?
Yeah. So the way I describe it, so the listeners can get a visual, is I felt like I was standing on the edge of the Amazon jungle with a butter knife, getting ready to try and like find my way through to the other side. But it's interesting. I was so addicted to sugar, and I'm like, I need to figure out why. I can just eat a little bit of it. I eat a bit and then I want to eat everything in the house and go and get more. And so I started to actually research about sugar and learn that sugar is 10 times more addictive than cocaine, that it excites the same part of the brain as hard drugs. It gives me what is called a big dopamine high, and dopamine is one of your mood boosting neurotransmitters that the brain produces. And they've manipulated and made food product so perfectly to give you the perfect dopamine high, especially if it's got sugar, if it's got yeast, it's got MSG, aspartame, even wheat and
All the
dairy.
good
They're,
things.
yeah, even wheat and dairy in North America are so modified. The protein content in them, which casein is the protein in dairy, specifically in cheese, that is the most concentrated, it gives you the same kind of high as a drug. Same with gluten and wheat.
Mhm.
And I had a huge wheat addiction and a dairy addiction. I'd eat a piece of cheese and want to eat the whole block. I'd eat a piece of bread and want to eat the whole loaf. And I know not everyone's like that, but I do see a lot of women that have very emotional connection to certain foods. And even though the food is hurting them and making them bloated or making them brain fogged or messing with their hormones, sometimes when we talk about finding alternatives or like minimizing an intake, they get angry and defensive. And I'm like, if we're getting angry and defensive, right? And you don't want to stop eating something or you don't want to minimize it, even though it's hurting you, we've got to break that down, whatever's going on emotionally,
Right.
and consider there may be some level of an addiction or an emotional reliance. It's like comfort food and things like that, right? Because you're so right. We don't know how to cope. And we are expected to play every role. And that's a lot of pressure. Plus, also, we need to look a certain way and behave a certain way and be nice. Shut up. Don't express your opinion. Oh, you're hormonal. Oh, you're being moody. Like, get it together when it's like no hormone imbalances are no joke. And you should not be
Yeah,
expected to get it together because it's a significant thing that can impact everything. And society needs to be re-educated on how to be more compassionate to women, especially if they're hormonal or dealing with something like that, because judging is not going to help anyone get any better, right? So I just feel like there's so many societal views or norms that are not healthy for us to have to try and like uphold,
totally.
right? Anyways, so the sugar thing was mind blowing because I'm like, I don't feel crazy. Wow, certain ingredients are being made on purpose to make people addicted to them. Wow, this is really great to know. And then I started to change the way that I ate, but it's when I wanted to still binge on healthy foods. Like I'd eat 10 bananas in a jar of natural peanut butter or a whole container of goat cheese and gluten-free pasta. And I'm like, there's something else here other than just changing the way that I eat, right? And so then I'm like, okay, let me get honest with myself. I'm now aware I don't love myself. I'm still really critical of my body. I'm still fighting with the number on the scale. I don't know how to cope with stress at all. I'm horrible at coping with stress. And I don't know what's triggering me to binge and emotionally eat. So then the next phase was I need to figure out what's triggering me. So I started a list, and it mostly would be after I would epically fail and binge again. But I'm like, okay, let me think about this. Why? What triggered me? And that's what really started that list. And then I started building self care practice, trying different kinds of meditation, yoga, breath, EFT tapping, getting outside, baths, just different things to try and start coping, which started to minimize how often I was binge eating. And then I put that list up of all my binge triggers in every room in my apartment because I'd always go to the store and buy the food. And I justified why the organic store would be healthier. It's not when you're eating as much as I was, but you know, the things we try to tell ourselves. And so I'd see the list and it started to remind me before I just go, let me look at this and see what's going on, right? So starting to build awareness and ownership and responsibility for what I'm doing. And over that time, as I started to catch my triggers and I started to build the self care and start catching negative self talk, being kinder to myself, even though I felt like a fraud in the beginning, I was like reprogramming my subconscious mind because it was always negative and critical. So I'd start catching that, apologize. What's something nice I can say about myself? What's something I'm grateful for about myself? And so that next year, I spent really delving into all of that. And then it was like the binge eating was gone. It was like minimal overeating here and there. And I just remember the last time I emotionally ate, I was sitting on my couch and I bought a couple of like loaves of banana bread and I just looked at it and I'm like, I don't even want to do this. And it's like at the time, it's like, wow, this switch is flipped and this is no longer feeling appealing. It actually now feels unfamiliar and uncomfortable to emotionally eat instead of familiar and comfortable. So that was a big win. And then as that fell away and I really learned how to love myself and like really feel that feeling of unconditional love, I did a lot of inner child healing because that 5 year old that got bullied on the bus, she needed a lot of love. And so did the all aspects of me that grew up just being so in mourning of my mom and witnessing her in decline. So I did a lot of inner child work. I still do. And then it was about going into, wow, I'm a sensitive empath. I feel everything. I'm afraid of my intuition. I need to learn how to manage all of this because it can be scary as you're healing and you step into your power to feel in your power, to feel worthy and self love. A lot of women fear success. They fear stepping into their power. They fear having it all. And so, how do we feel safe in that that becomes your natural state of being? So, I had to like do all that. And then it was hormones and gut. And then I started my business. And then it's like starting a business and healing your relationship with money and lack and setting boundaries and stopping people pleasing. So, it was like so many levels, but those were some of the things that I did on the journey.
Amazing. Yeah, you like hit the nail on the head. It's like once you start like your healing journey, it just takes you on this path. Like there's like a million
Yeah.
turns and doing all the work. I guess I'm interested. What do you feel was at the root of the self-sabotage with food?
Definitely unworthiness, which I find is at the root for most women. So I didn't feel good enough and I had avoidant like lack of self-love. And anytime we have a lack of self-love and we have a void that we're trying to fill with anything, food, success, alcohol, shopping, like we're never going to fill that void with anything external. And I really think that that unworthiness is birthed in childhood, and it is for most people, because we want people's approval, we want to be loved, we want to be validated.
Mhm.
And I just think that like a lot of women have or are struggling with these very things that I'm talking about, whether it's some or all of it. And if we don't deal with it innocently, we can end up passing some of those habits and behaviors and beliefs onto our children. And then they can easily pick things up. Like I have so many clients who their mothers put them on diets when they were children, or they got taken to Weight Watchers, or they got told there was comments about their weight, or you're eating too much of that, you're going to get fat. And like that is literally what shaped their unworthiness and their unhealthy relationship with food, or their issues like asphyxiation with diets to try and control their weight, even though there's like so much more to deal with. So I do think a lot of it has started in childhood or traumas, or big stressors that will really put us in this fight or flight, I don't feel safe or confident state. And then we create a coping mechanism or two or three.
Yeah, absolutely. So what are the differences between emotional binge eating and food addiction?
Yeah, so we'll start with emotional eating. So, emotional eating is the overarching of any of these, which is where we're using food to cope. So, emotional eating is any reason for eating other than physical nourishment. So, let's just get clear on what physical hunger is, because a lot of women don't even get hungry, so they don't even know what that feels like. But physical hunger is you get a stomach growl or you get a hunger signal. Now, if you're not having these two things happen, it's not normal. So, this is where I highly encourage you to reach out and work with somebody who can help with hormone testing, digestive assessing, and obviously looking at your stress. Because if you're not hungry, it's often signs of a thyroid issue, low stomach acid, or some other hormone issue. And it's not normal to not feel hungry, because what do we assume? I'm not hungry, I'm not going to eat. Then we're not eating enough. And then later in the
Right.
day, you want to overeat. So I always want to clarify this, because many women are like, I'm not hungry, I don't need to eat. And I'm like, no, there's something going on. Other signs, though, are like you look at the clock, you haven't eaten in a few hours. Your blood sugar has crashed, right? So you're hangry, dizzy, faint, lightheaded, shaky, you're pale, you're irritable, now you're craving a bunch of sugar. Those are signs of physical hunger. And then emotional is everything else. So you eat because you're bored, you're sad, you're tired, you're upset. Maybe you're in celebration mode, and there's nothing wrong with enjoying a mindful amount of indulgence and celebration. But then we'll be like, we celebrate, and then it's like, I'm going to keep going.
Right.
Alcohol is a big emotional eating trigger. Getting on the scale, you don't like the number that you see, having a negative interaction with someone, negative self-talk, guilt. Maybe you binged the night before and you're in such a deep state of shame and guilt, and that can re-trigger you today. So there's dozens and dozens of potential emotional eating triggers that are physical, emotional, energetic, chemical, behavioral, environmental. There's so many levels of them that we're not taught about. And I think that's one of the reasons why women keep struggling, because we're only taught it's because you're sad or bored. And yes, those are two very valid triggers, but there's actually so many more to learn about. And so with emotional eating, it could be like you get triggered by something and you eat a few pieces of chocolate, you have a handful of chips, you eat an extra like something, but maybe you're not eating until you're so full you're sick, but maybe you're bloated a little bit, or like, oh, I didn't need that. And what starts to happen is emotional eating starts to turn more into binge eating when we're eating until we're so full we're sick. You start, and having that little something triggers a screw it, I already messed up, I'm going to eat whatever I want. And then you're in this loss of control for the day, or you're just throwing in the towel for the day or the week and like, I'll try again next week to eat clean. That's often the mentality that comes up. So yeah, the binge eating is a full loss of control, eating until you're so full that you're sick, or you feel very bloated or uncomfortable, those kinds of things. And you're often eating a whole package of something, or right, like 5 donuts instead of one, or like a whole pack of cookies, or a whole bag of chips, or maybe more, right? Like for me, it was several items at once. And then of course we have the binge purge cycle, which is we purge thinking, oh, if I get rid of it, it like I won't gain weight, nothing bad will happen. I'll now feel relief from being full. However, this is just like binge eating or any kind of self-sabotage, is a lack of taking ownership and responsibility for how we're feeling. And that to me is just the ultimate. So it just makes us feel worse on all levels. And then food addiction is the full asphyxiation and obsession with food and chasing numbers. So I'm either obsessed with, like, my mental capacity is like 99% or 95% focused on the next diet, the next meal, eating clean. I need to lose weight. I need to be in control with food. So what diet or eating style do I need to try next to ensure that I don't binge again and lose control again? It's heavily focused on like counting or, right, like weighing or measuring your food and being perfect. I need to be perfect on this diet plan or this weight loss plan with food and exercise or one or the other to gain this result, which is control with food and weight loss. Okay. And then it swings the other way, which is I'm completely out of control with food. I'm obsessing over my next binge. I'm, planning what I'm going to lose control with and what is going to, give me that big dopamine high. So it's either usually one or the other. And then it's like the numbers on the scale and all that kind of stuff.
Thank you. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I know for myself, when I'm like going towards food or wanting to eat that bag of salt and vinegar chips, it's like a mix of not wanting to sit and process what's going on in my life,
Mhm,
and I
mhm,
think a lot of people can relate to that is the instantaneous dopamine hit. Like the
mhm,
world is like giving us all of these triggers and telling us that we need to be more and do more. And so like those little instant gratifications are not the way.
mhm,
Um, but you mentioned hormones, and so I'm curious. I would love to tap into hormones a little bit. So what are the most common female hormone imbalances that you see, and what are some of the signs and symptoms of those?
yeah. And I'm going to touch on all of that. And what I want to blend in is what you just said about like the world and the expectations of us. That's why it's important for us to heal and learn to love ourselves and take our power back because then we go, no, world, you're not going to tell me how to run the show. I'm going to decide how to run the show. And that is how you stop letting the external dictate how you need to behave and act. Right.
Right.
And that also really helps your hormones balance. But yeah, so with hormones, the first big thing I see is called high cortisol or low cortisol or adrenal fatigue is one of the terms you'll hear more often. Cortisol is your stress hormone. So the longer you're chronically stressed, the more your brain senses the stress and communicates with your adrenals that sit on your kidneys, which produce cortisol, flood the body with cortisol and adrenaline. There is a bear. It's probably not really a bear, but that's what the body thinks. There's a bear getting ready to attack. We need to protect you. So flood the body with cortisol and adrenaline so you can protect yourself and run away. Most common signs of a cortisol imbalance, which I often 90% see high, some I see too low. High is fatigue, low is adrenal burnout. Either way, abdominal weight gain is the first symptom. Why?
Right.
Because if that bear were to come and attack you in your abdomen, if you have extra weight and inflammation there, retention, you have a higher likelihood of surviving that attack. You have a lot of important organs in your core. Your digestive, reproductive, urinary systems, they're all exposed. So that's why we put weight on in the abdomen if we're in a state of stress. But then we get upset. Oh, I need to lose the weight. I'm gaining weight in my abdomen. We get critical, diet, exercise more. That's just going to make your cortisol higher, actually. And then, women get upset because it's not getting better, but we're doing all the misaligned things to actually help that come down.
Right.
All the
Yeah.
mainstream things just make it worse. So, abdominal weight gain, fatigue, and exhaustion, afternoon energy lulls, trouble falling asleep, increased sugar, processed carb, and salt cravings, brain fog, low sex drive, irregular cycles. I often find they get shorter. Women have trouble getting pregnant or staying pregnant, anxiety, and you feel spread too thin. You react to little things that you usually don't. Maybe you're more, reactive to your partner, your kids, your friends, but you can't process stress in the same way. And if you're dysregulated because of that, it's just so much easier to be like, I want to go eat. Your appetite levels actually increase when you have high cortisol. So it makes it easier to keep eating and not feel full.
Mm.
So
Right.
that's the first big one that I see. And then what ends up happening usually is if that goes for long enough, which unfortunately it does, then women end up with thyroid issues. So 9 times out of 10, it's called hypothyroid, which is where the thyroid gets sluggish. So thyroid sits in your neck. It's a butterfly shaped gland. But the more stressed the brain is, and if that stress is not resolving, there's a gland called the pituitary gland, and it gets overstimulated. And if it gets overstimulated, it produces too much of a hormone called thyroid stimulating hormone. And this is needed to help communicate to our thyroid to produce thyroid hormones. But we don't want too much of it in the body. Excess of anything isn't good, right? So when that starts to get high, and I'm telling you, the normal ranges for testing ladies are way too big. Most women are having hormone imbalances in the normal ranges. And there's actually functional ranges in the test results that are normal, but the ranges the doc is giving you are way too big. So if you've been told, I feel like I'm having all these symptoms, but everyone's saying it's normal, get a second opinion, get a third opinion, work with someone that's more holistically minded because all my colleagues and I agree that are in like functional medicine, naturopathy, holistic nutrition, the ranges are too big. So it's
Right.
kind of it's a common conversation in the more of the holistic medicine realm. So TSH gets too high, hair loss, eyebrow thinning, cold hands and feet, weight gain, hard to lose, anxiety, fatigue in the morning. You don't feel like yourself. Cold hands and feet. Your joints can ache. You can have more muscle pain, constipation. You don't feel hungry. So here we are with a whole other array of symptoms, right? And then if our thyroid itself has trouble producing the thyroid hormones properly, this amplifies the symptoms that I just talked about. And often most women are put on Synthroid, which is synthetic T4, which is what the thyroid produces. It's one of the thyroid
Right.
hormones. But often, hey, if you've gotten relief from doing that, amazing. But most women are not getting relief from that. It's just making their numbers look good. And then they're like, hey, but how come I don't feel better? Because I find what we need to start doing, ladies, is we need to start asking, okay, I have a thyroid issue. Why? What's causing it? What are the root factors that have created it and have fueled it? And it's not just your genetics, it's habits, it's behaviors, it's the emotional eating, it's putting yourself last, it's not expressing yourself. Throat chakra, thyroid, they're very connected. It's all the
Very,
inflammatory
yeah.
processed food we're eating, it's poor gut health. So we need to look at all of these facets. And in order to improve thyroid function, we don't just use a medication. Medication we can work with, but there's a lot of other things we need to do, and we can improve your thyroid function. And then the third part of the trifecta that I see is a lot of women dealing with low progesterone and low estrogen, or low progesterone and high estrogen. So those are your sex hormones, the feminine hormones, your reproductive hormones. But what I often see is in your cyclical years, ladies, you produce the majority of your progesterone and estrogen via ovulation. So as you're having your monthly cycle, however, some women are not ovulating. They're getting a period, but that's called an ovulation. So you need to make sure you're ovulating to adequately produce enough of these. And then when you get into perimenopause, which starts between 35 and 37, ladies, it's not when you're like 50. That's menopause, around 50 when your period is gone for more than a year. And then postmenopause is usually a few years after that. But as we hit perimenopause, we start to have a slight decline in progesterone. Cortisol levels start to go up a little bit. Thyroid function can slightly like slow down. And I don't want to plant limiting beliefs in your head, ladies. Like, this is what they tell you is going to start to happen. But if you're on the ball and you get things tested and you heal and you work on this, you're going to stay in pretty adequate levels the whole way through. And this will prevent a lot of
Mm.
symptoms and suffering, especially as you get into your 40s. And even if you already are having symptoms, we can resolve. But low progesterone, this is mind blowing to me when I learned all of this, Lisa. Like, you don't feel like yourself at all. So low progesterone really impacts our mood first and foremost. And why? Because if we don't have enough progesterone, we can't properly produce in the body or have the communication be streamlined with things like serotonin, which is one of our mood boosting neurotransmitters, dopamine, GABA, which helps us fall and stay asleep, as well as helps us feel a sense of fulfillment and happy, and oxytocin, which is the connection neurotransmitter. So when your oxytocin is low because your progesterone's low, you feel disconnected from everything. Even if you have a great life, great spouse, great family, you love your job or your
Right.
business, whatever, you're just like meh. You're flatlined. Nothing excites you. You feel lack of motivation. You feel exhausted. You can actually start to resent people out of the blue. You feel more critical of yourself and others, and you can feel more called to create conflict. So that's why some women get into the second half of their cycle and all of a sudden they're like arguing with their spouse, or they're having a lot of reactions, or they're having really dark thoughts or thinking very negatively, and find it really hard to get through that second half of their cycle. And that's because they're not producing enough progesterone, and it should be the highest during that time. So PMDD is a common term for like heightened mood issues during your ovulation and your luteal, which are phase 3 and 4 of your cycle. And that progesterone plays a huge role. If your neurotransmitters are low, do you know how much more you're going to want to emotionally eat? the sugar,
Totally.
right? All of it. Like it, so that becomes an emotional eating trigger. And it also can become like being down on yourself and picking your body apart and all that kind of stuff. Also, we can have more irregular cycles. Again, this is where we can have a higher risk of miscarriage if progesterone is low. We need enough progesterone to carry full term. Same with estrogen. And then as well, you can have longer, heavier cycles if your progesterone's low, or they can be really short. Brain fog, fatigue, and one of the most like interruptive symptoms is the insomnia. Being awake between 1 and
Right.
4 a.m. for hours is so frustrating because then you're tired and brain fogged for the next day, right? So those are some of the most common symptoms of low progesterone. Low estrogen is going to be things like UTIs, bloating, vaginal dryness, headaches. It's going to be, again, mood stuff as well. It
Hmm.
could be things like tinnitus, vertigo. Like there's so many potential symptoms, and that's why the most important thing is to actually get your hormones tested and see what's actually going on. We can't just guess with symptoms. Please don't go on Dr. Google and just be like, "This is the symptoms. What do I have?"
Yeah,
You
that's
please
the
work with
worst.
people because you can make something worse by accident if you don't know what's going on hormonally. And one of the biggest blocks I see for women is they're fasting and doing really extreme eating styles without knowing their hormone state. And then they're upset because they're getting more tired, they're gaining weight more easily, and all these things are happening. And it's because especially as you get into 35 plus, like anything that is not somewhat balanced is just going to throw everything off more in my
Totally.
experience anyway with thousands of women. And like I just connect with a woman and she was fasting and doing carnivore. Her cortisol was through the roof. Her blood sugar was
Right.
so low. Her progesterone and estrogen are non-existent. And she's having heart palpitations and anxiety. And I'm like, probably that threw everything over the edge, but she didn't know, right? She didn't know her hormone state. So I can't express enough how important it is for us to be getting testing done once a year, especially once you hit in your 30s, at least once a year, ladies, if not every 6 months, and work with someone who knows what the tests mean, what the results mean, and can correlate it to your symptoms and provide you with the proper recommendations that are actually going to help you feel better. And someone who's going to hear you rather than like, yeah, everything's normal, you're fine, it's just in your head. No, we know you're intuitive. If you get that
Yeah.
gut feeling something's off, you advocate until you find the right person who's going to walk right alongside you. So that's hormones.
Yeah,
There's more, but
totally.
that's the summary. It's deep, it's complex.
There's so much stuff. And I think you made a good point. Like, we need to go to our doctors and advocate for ourselves because more often than not, unfortunately, in Western medicine, the doctors have like a specific, like, they follow a certain way. So for
Mm,
me, when I knew something was going on with my body as a 40-year-old, my doctor said, "You're too young to be going through this type of thing." And I was like, "No, not even close." So then, I went and found someone that
mm,
specializes in the hormone stuff and got myself tested there. But we know when something's not right. Like,
yeah.
that you're not supposed to be feeling that way. But that's the thing is there's so many possible symptoms to hormone imbalances and
Hmm.
they can bleed into other issues. So I
Yeah.
agree, like get yourself checked out by someone who knows their stuff, who
Yeah.
really cares and who wants to, help you because there's a lot of it out there and a lot of people are talking about it right now.
Which is important. And we need to normalize it and not let it just be like a thing of the moment because women in their 20s are some of them are flagging postmenopausal. I was postmenopausal in my 20s when I stopped binge eating. That's the kind of impact I had on my hormone function, right?
Right.
So age honestly doesn't mean much when we need to like just do testing and see where you're at. And so yeah, if you're told by your doctor, "Oh, you're too young," or "This isn't a thing," or "We don't test that." No, you go get that person who's not going to say any of that to you because yeah, I essentially had to like tell my clients to stop going to their doctor for labs because the doctor wouldn't do half the tests. You don't need cortisol. That's too expensive. We don't test. And then the client's feeling bad. Like, I just want to know what's going on in my body. And you shouldn't be made to feel like that. Right.
Yeah,
So,
totally.
yeah.
Totally. So tell us about your program. Tell us about what you do.
Yeah. So, in my business, I do a few different things. So, I have my signature private coaching, which is the body freedom coaching programs. longer term 1 year and then shorter term. And in those, we really look at everything. So I help my clients fully heal any form of emotional eating, binge eating, food addiction, or binge purge cycles. We do hormone testing. So it just really depends where you're located. If you're in Canada versus States or overseas, it's just different methods of getting testing to you or requisitions to the lab. And we flow with like a big 1 hour startup session and dive into whatever your main concerns are. So whether it's the emotional binge eating, it's hormones, it's weight, it's gut issues, it's blood sugar, it's people pleasing, unworthiness, whatever it is. We really do a full meal deal first dive in. We obviously look at your food too, but I often find we got to only make so many changes at once because otherwise it can be overwhelming, right? And I don't
Yeah,
want to like
and people freeze.
I don't want to make your cortisol higher than it is. We want to bring that stuff down. So we take the journey at a pace that feels good for you. And then we flow into like biweekly coaching for the term that we're together and review your hormone tests. What's going on? Levels too low or too high? How is it correlated to your symptoms? How do we deal with multiple hormone issues at once? We also look at inflammatory markers, B12, magnesium, like vitamins and minerals, making sure nothing is too low or too high. And then we look at your gut health and make sure that's well supported. So if you're bloated, you're constipated, your stools are loose, you got candida or some kind of gut bug imbalance, we take all that into account. But depending on what's going on, there's a method and a way to deal with it all so that it's going to give you the best results. Same with weight. Often, many of my clients have been in diet mentalities for years. And so, unfortunately, they don't realize they have suppressed their metabolism via all the dieting and restrictions. So, we have to
Right.
spend a certain amount of time strengthening their metabolism, improving their hormone function, getting them eating regularly, and feeling safe eating enough. So many women are afraid to eat enough fat. Carbs, protein, any of it, it's all been demonized in some way. So it's like building that food confidence while you heal and let go of the triggers is so powerful. We build self worth, we work on body image, we do inner child healing, we do a lot of mindset work. Helping tame your inner critic is a big part of it because it's not the true you, and helping you really live in your heart and your power and how to set boundaries and all kinds of different things. So there's lots of different like tools and things that I integrate to help my clients with that. And then I do group coaching once or twice a year where we integrate those things in a group setting. And then I do a lot of like online workshops and master classes and things like that to help from the client standpoint. Something new that I'm going to be getting into is actually helping anyone in the health space. Like if you're a health coach or you're a naturopath or a functional doctor, but you don't know how to maybe even bring up, are you struggling with binge or emotional eating? Because I think it's good for all healthcare practitioners to have awareness around if their clients are struggling with anything like that, because it is going to impact the way that you support them. To just be aware of if any of that is going on. And the reasoning for that is if you're struggling with that and your ND or whoever wants to put you on like an elimination diet because you have food sensitivity or whatever, you have to cut a bunch of stuff out, that could actually trigger you to binge more. And so if the
Totally.
practitioner knows, they can support you and approach things in a more intentional way that's not going to trigger you. So I'm going to be bringing in a lot of education for healthcare practitioners because I've just had so many women come to me that say like, I don't even want to see this person anymore. They put me on this diet and then I wanted to binge more. And it's not the practitioner's fault. They didn't know. But if we can start the narrative of how to have those conversations in our sessions with our clients, I think it will just help like the dialogue be better rather than people not admitting that they're dealing with it. So that will be coming at some point.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Cool. And where can people find you to learn more?
Yeah, so the website is amberapproved.ca. I have a free emotional eating quiz and workshop if you want to check those out. As well, I have a 30-minute complimentary consultation you can book in. It doesn't matter where you are in the world, it's via Zoom for us to talk about what your struggles are and your goals. And then the podcast is the No Sugarcoating Podcast. And we're almost to 600 episodes now, actually. I got to update my bio. But yeah, it's on all podcast apps. And then I'm on social media. It's my name, Amber Romaniuk, Romaniuk.
Beautiful. Do you have any last thoughts for the audience today before we say goodbye?
You are worthy to heal. Don't let the shame and embarrassment, if you're having any, like block you from taking steps. And just anyone can do it. It's not luck on someone's hand. It's literally you choosing to go, like, I'm going to muster up my courage and bravery and take a step, talk to somebody, listen to a resource, just take a step in that direction of healing. And I'm telling you, you will get there. So keep going and don't give up on it because you will get there.
Thank you so much for being here today and for sharing your story and for all your wisdom. So many women are going to be able to relate to this and really benefit from hearing your story. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, you got to come back. And to our audience, thank you for tuning in. If any of you are struggling with emotional eating, binge eating, or anything to do with addiction, please know that you're not alone. And we do have resources for you. I mean, you can contact Amber, but we'll make sure to put some of those in the show notes for you as well. Until next time, take care, everyone.